Today we are going to look at a game from the popular Grandmaster Ben Finegold. This game took place in San Diego in 2006 for the United States Championship. And with the white pieces, we have Alexander Lenderman, who at the time was international master, rated 2431, and Ben Finegold had the black pieces and was rated 2563. So Lenderman started off with e4, c5, d4, and at this time Lenderman was specializing in the Smith-Morra gambit in the Sicilian. So thus the early d4, c takes d4, c3, and there it is. Since those days when he was at IM, he's switched to playing d4 exclusively, so we don't get to see him playing the Smith-Morra gambit anymore. But during this time, he was playing it a lot and making videos and things like that. So this kind of might explain Finegold's next move. Understanding that Lenderman's a specialist, he plays the move d3, which is one of several ways to decline the gambit and still get a good game is black. Of course, the main line is simply to accept the gambit after d takes c3, knight takes c3, and white is down a pawn. And theory holds it that although white is able to generate some activity, it's just not enough to compensate in the long term for the pawn deficit that appears over the board. I'm just giving some random lines that usually take place in this. And somewhere down the line you get d6, queen e2, and moves like that. But for this game, Finegold declined the gambit with d3. Another way to decline the gambit is with knight f6, and which if you're an Alekhine defense specialist, it's a good way to decline the gambit. So knight f6, for example, attacking the e pawn straight away. e5, knight d5, just like the Alekhines. C takes d4, and then you start attacking white's spearhead on e5. And this is pretty harmless for black. So Ben decided to decline it in this fashion with d3. And it does cost black a little time in that he's moving this pawn again. But he's arguing that c3 has cost white a tempi. Now he can't develop his knight on the most natural square in the Sicilian. And although he's helping him develop this bishop, that it is behind this e pawn, and the bishop is also not ideally placed. Another thing that black has in store is a quick d5. So for example, if knight f3, d5 striking the center immediately, exploiting the fact that this c3 pawn is blocking the knight's arrival on c3 to attack the queen with tempo once she arrives to d5. So for example, e takes d5, queen takes d5, and then bishop d3. And black's queen is exposed somewhat, but he doesn't really have any big problems. The other idea, of course, after d3 is the simple bishop d3 straight away. And black can also say d5 here. but I think d6 is probably a little safer. The e takes d5, queen takes, knight f3, knight c6, castle. We see black has easy going development here. But he still must be careful about white's piece activity. So instead of d5, perhaps after bishop takes d3, d6, a little more conservative, holding things back. Okay, back to the game. This is why this line, you see a lot of the move c4, which forestalls black from playing d5. Again, this costs time. Not only does it keep black from playing d5 right away, the knight, it can now come to c3 also. g6 by Finegold. Bishop takes d3, bishop g7, knight f3, and just to make one remark, that this pawn structure highlights what I was saying earlier about this bishop coming to d3. That yes, black has used the tempi to bring the bishop out and quote unquote develop the bishop, but look where the bishop is. You know, if you want to call this development, then be my guest, but the bishop definitely has to be redeployed at some point in order to be effective, or these pawns have to be advanced. Knight c6, and black is just sticking to the fundamental theme of the Sicilian defense opening, which is attacking the e5 and d4 squares. Castles, d6, h3, preventing bishop g4 from taking place, knight f6, knight c3, castle, bishop e3, and we have a Maroczy bind type pawn structure where white space advantage can become quite annoying for black as the game continues on. Black's strategy is to break the center, and there's basically three ways in a Maroczy bind that black does this, either by orchestrating the move b5, orchestrating d5, and playing the move f5, all designed to break down that bind structure. Attacking c4 by say moves like knight e5 and rook c8 and bishop on e6, for example, provoking the move b3, and then attacking those pawns. So it's very important for black to have a plan in place to break down that structure, or black can find himself suffering for a large portion of the game. Knight d7, and this is a good move. Finegold plans to redeploy this knight at c5, and also at the same time it keeps white from posting pieces on d4, because now the bishop scope is increased. The bishop scope is increased by removing this knight. So knight d7. So in a nutshell, Finegold is just improving his pieces. Queen d2 and knight c5. Again, this is a normal place for the knight in a Maroczy bind if you're black. Rook ac1, and Finegold chooses the move f5 to pressure the center. Now this is a provocative move. This is a move that be chosen by dynamic players. Now more positional, maybe, and for instance, more to my style would be queen a5. Just patiently probing the queen side. The idea behind, sorry about that. The idea behind queen a5, right, is to let's just show you, is to eventually chip at these pawns over here on c4 and a2. Remember, I told you the major idea for black against the Maroczy bind is to break those pawns down, basically break white's blockade down on d5. So for instance, if black could move a few times, move like bishop e6, notice the pressure on c4. And then that will be followed up by knight d3, removing that bishop on d3, queen d3. Again, this is just an example so you can see the idea clearly that I'm presenting. And knight b4. Notice now you're going to win. You're going to win either the c pawn or you're going to win the a pawn. For example, if the queen moves to e2, then you can snatch the a pawn. If the queen moves to d2, then you can snatch the c pawn. Okay. So that's just an example of the idea. Of course, white has moves too, and after queen a5, white could simply opt for bishop h6, going with the old tried and true plan of trading off the powerful dragon bishop. Bishop e6, bishop takes g7, king takes, bishop e2, of course anticipating black's plans, f6, knight d4, and bishop e7 and queen e3. Just for an example, and you have an equal game. Okay, so let's go back now. Instead of again choosing a more positional plan, Finegold chooses a dynamic continuation, f5. And f5 can be very dangerous to both players. E takes f5 by Lenderman. Let me just give you an example of kind of how black can, some of black's ideas. So for instance, with the move f5, notice it has the same point of a5, which is destroying the to destroy the white bind. In this variation with f5, black is obviously putting pressure and ready to destroy the e4 pawn, whereas in the other variation we saw more pressure on the queen side pawn, namely c4. So for example here, if black is allowed several moves to express his idea, right? Imagine chess were like that. Knight takes d3, again getting that bishop, which is an important defensive piece in white's configuration. Queen takes d3, bishop e6, again putting pressure on the pawns. And again, let's continue with the same idea of knight b4, queen e2, and say f takes e4, knight takes e4, and voila, the a2 pawn drops. Okay, so let those variations emphasize the ideas of black, what black is trying to do. You can't sit by and let white just establish and hold that bind, because that is an advantageous situation. And luckily there's ways for black to create counterplay. But if you miss these opportunities, that bind will just simply be reinforced by white as the game goes on, and then you will end up in a very bad endgame. So let's go back to the game now. So after f5, e takes f5 by Lenderman, g takes f5 by Finegold. Now Finegold is relying on dynamic chances here with this advanced pawn. Of course, in some cases the pawn can advance to f4. Black has his open g file to play moves like king h8 and then rook g8. Alright, moving the pawn on the e file to either e6 or d5, transferring the queen over at the right time to the king side. Alright, these are the ideas that black hopes will compensate for his weakness in the position which exist on the squares d5, e6, and of course his exposed king. So the game will revolve around these factors of white kind of trying to consolidate his positional and static advantages, and black trying to um, make the most out of the dynamic situation on the board. Now, this may involve sacrifices of pawns and pieces, and these are the type of things you have to do, especially as black when you're in these type of positions. You can't really be too materialistic. All right, you're looking for time, right? A gain of tempi to execute the opponent, right? You're looking to put the opponent's pieces in awkward positions, um, by offering material or drawing the opponent's pieces on the other side of the board where there's no action taking place. So let's continue. Bishop b1 by Lenderman. King h8. Rook fd1. And I like white here. Queen e8. The idea is very simple. Transfer the if you look at the pawn structure, it looks like a Dutch defense, except the C pawn is missing. You had the F pawn here advance. You had the pawn on D6. And if you can imagine a pawn here, you had this formation, and of course you put a pawn there. You have a Leningrad, but those are you can use that as a guidepost to help you in choosing your plans in these positions. That's what I do, right? I look at this and I see other positions, and then I can tailor my play accordingly. Now I know it's not the exact position, but I know that generally that the type of play is very similar, except I think the G pawn missing actually can be a benefit to black, because now the queen doesn't have to worry about moving the G pawn to gain access to the queen side. The G file is open for the rook, and black's plan is pretty much the same, is to attack on the king side here. Knight d5 from Lenderman. Rook b8. Knight d4. And white is again utilizing his static advantages in the position. There's a lot of weak squares in black's position. Even stronger move perhaps is b4. Say knight e4, queen e1, and e6, knight c3, rook takes c3, and here white has no problem giving up the exchange, because this bishop is so powerful that it is definitely worth a rook here. Of course, black is forced to play e5, and rook takes d6 is a good move. But even stronger than the immediate capture is to drive the knight away. Here he has to play a move like f4. So let's say, for example, he goes to e7. Now two moves are good here, but here's the best one. Rook takes d5, d6 could have been played, or the natural knight takes e5, opening the diagonal. Okay, back to the game. Rook b8, knight d4, bishop d7, b3, queen f7, knight takes c6, bishop takes c6. And of course Lenderman realizes black's dynamic potential, and white basically wants to trade off pieces in a judicious manner and just get into a superior ending at this point. b4, knight e6, and now ideas like f4 appear on the board. b5. f4 is a moment of truth. Finegold realizes that he has to press in this position, and he takes a gamble here. Lenderman simply plays bishop takes a7, attacking the rook. Rook a8, and he plays bishop b6 here. Perhaps a little better might have been bishop takes b6. Excuse me, b takes c6. And if b takes c6, and just simply bishop b6, c takes, and this leads to wholesale exchanges, which help White's cause here. But Lenderman played bishop b6, bishop d7, and now Lenderman played bishop a5, and his idea here is to trade off this powerful bishop by playing this move c3. Excuse me, bishop to c3. Here he missed another strong opportunity. Notice tactically the position of this bishop here on d7. So c5 is called for here, with the idea that, for example, again, I'm going to give White another move just to show you his idea. So c5 with the idea of taking, c takes d6, e takes d6, and now the strong move, knight c7. And if knight takes c7, then simply rook takes c7. Pinning this bishop here, threatening queen takes d7 also, as well as rook takes b7. This is winning for White. So instead of knight takes c7, if simply rook ac8, then queen d6, and again with this double attack on the bishop. So c5 was the correct move there, and I'm not going to say it's winning, but it gives White a big advantage there. Lenderman instead played bishop a5 with the plan that I spoke about a few minutes ago, to bring the bishop to c3. Finegold continues playing dynamically, attacking, putting pressure on the opponent, and giving the opponent things to think about. It's not easy for White just to go along with this plan, because when the king is under attack, the attack may be dubious, but it's still something that you have to work out. Lenderman plays knight b6, attacking the rook on a8, and the bishop is hanging on d7. But think about what I said a few minutes ago about the dynamic nature of Black's attack here. Is Black wants White to divert his pieces over to the queen side, right, away from the protection of his king. If you look at the E file, F file, G file, and H file, you will notice that White has no protection around the king. Okay, this is a major factor here. So, going on with that understanding, Finegold played a bold move here. Bold move, bold continuation. He says those two pieces on the A and B file are out of play. He plays knight f4, giving up the bishop on d7. He says, go ahead, take it. Okay? And he says, go ahead, take my rook on a8. What would you play? You can pause the video and work it out. Lenderman played knight d7. Right? Why not? Picking up a free piece. Of course, nothing is free. If knight takes a8, a lot of you may have played that, Finegold would win immediately after knight e2 check. And let's say, for example, king f1, then just f takes g2. And this mate shortly. Look at the queen and rook lined up on the f file. Can't deal with the check and avoid getting mated. You can work those mates out. If king h2, then just simply bishop e5, and white must give up the queen and might as well resign. So knight takes a8, it's out of the picture, and Lenderman played knight d7 instead. Rook g8 by Finegold. And what I like about Finegold's play is that even after giving up the bishop on d7 and allowing the knight to capture with the tempo against his rook, the rook is just simply driven to a place where he wants to go anyway. The g file has been open for many moves now, and the rook has wanted to go to the g file. So he should thank Lenderman for helping him to get it there. Lenderman continues with his idea, but it's based on faulty tactics here. He plays bishop c3. And that's something in chess, is sometimes you get stuck on an idea or a plan and you don't change it, even though it's time to reevaluate it. And it looks so natural because you see that bishop is so powerful on that diagonal, and you just think, okay, I'm up a piece. This is probably what white's thinking. I'm up a piece here. I got better endgame chances. Let's just trade some pieces off and eliminate the black attack. So what happened after bishop c3? This turns out to be a blunder, whereby Lenderman is completely lost. Knight e2 check. King h2. And now Finegold plays a real simple move. Bishop takes c3. This unleashes the power of the rook now on the g file. He plays queen h6. Of course, it does not save white from rook takes g2 check. King h1. Rook ag8. Rook f1. And now here comes a real sweet move from Ben Finegold, popular grandmaster. Bishop d2. And you should be able to work that out. But the basic premise is if queen takes d2, there's two winning moves. Most people will immediately see the see after queen d2, queen h5 is winning, which is true. Queen h5 wins also, and is the most natural looking move. Although white can still play bishop f5. That's more like a computer move, right? Protecting h3. But what wins even faster than queen d2 is knight g3. Excuse me. What wins faster than queen h5 is again after queen takes d2 is just simply knight g3 check. Which is very powerful, and you work that out. But again, if you found after bishop d2, queen h5, you're just as good. But knight g3 is a winner also. So nice game, nice tactical game against I am now Grandmaster Aleks Lenderman. It was I think about 2670 right now. Very strong GM. But let me go back to bishop c3 and give you an alternative here. White, for better or for worse, probably should have opted to play king h2, and after that, say f takes g2, rook c3, basically bringing some assistance to his beleaguered king, giving back the piece. Rook takes a5, rook f3, and this is just a sample line here. And what it is we see that Black's dynamic play offsets the 3 pawns on the queen side and whatever static advantages that White possessed. The dynamic play and the constant attacks that are available against the king kind of stifle White being able to win. But king h2 was probably Lenderman's best chance here. Another idea he could have tried was bishop e4, again bringing some assistance to the king, giving back the piece. And you see how the pieces come to White's assistance here. But again, Black recovers his piece, and so the position is probably equal. So king h2, bishop e4, g3, another move could be met by knight takes h3, king f1. But Black has a little more difficulty because White has a little bit of shelter here. King e1, for instance, knight g5, bishop d3. There comes the piece to the assistance of White again. And again, these are just some sample lines. Again, notice White gives back the piece in all these variations because Black's dynamic possibilities are so great that it forces the capitulation of that bishop on a5. So this is another example of what the ending may look like. Notice the opposite color bishops. Material, the pawns are equal, and again, that's another draw there. But again, congratulations to Finegold there because he put Lenderman under so much pressure that he just couldn't find a way, find the correct way in the murky complications that existed on the board. Another attempt is g4. Again, giving back the piece. Sorry. Just wanted to show you g4. Rook takes, king f1. Again, a lot of play in the position. Black swarming. Black may be better in that position. So, excuse me. So the top recommendations in that position for Black there, for White, to possibly save him is king h2, bishop e4, and g3. Continuation in the game, bishop c3, attempting to hold on to the extra material, ended in disaster after the powerful move and natural move, knight e2. Again, this is how the game ended here. And of course, Lenderman resigned after that. And it's a very beautiful ending because we see the victory of Black's strategy here and how he was able to distract White's pieces over to the queen side and cause Lenderman to leave his pieces temporarily undefended. His king temporarily undefended. And as you can see in this snapshot right here, notice all of the white pieces are on the queen side except the king. And this is where the assassination takes place. So I hope you learned that video, and perhaps you might adopt that line against the Smith-Morra gambit instead of giving White what he wants. So this is also has a psychological aspect to it, playing D3, because white normally wants this attacking game and he's willing to play a pawn down. But black is saying here, no, 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 we'll keep the material equal, but you won't get this huge attack. We're going to go into a different type of game than you set out for. And what is interesting in this game also is that, and this will be my final remark, is that again, if you play Smith-Morra as white, you want to be the attacking player. You want to be an aggressor. But if you look at this game, you'll see that the tides completely turned. That it was Finegold who wind up putting the bringing the attack and pressure to Lenderman, and it was Lenderman trying to consolidate and hold. So it's interesting turn of events over the board, and of course psychologically during the game. So please like, subscribe, and comment, and I'll see you on the next video.